Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another special guest episode. I'm delighted today to be joined by Dr. Sapna Shah-Haque, and we are going to be talking about her story related to burnout and transitioning, and talk a little bit about her podcast. Dr. Shah-Haque, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a great opportunity to be here.
Yeah. Well, so tell us a little bit. So you're an internal medicine specialist practicing in Kansas. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'm a native Kansan. Went to school at the University of Kansas School of Medicine. Did my residency in Wichita in the same institution. And I decided to go rural just because it's an easier lifestyle, I think, than living in the city with a commute. And so I've been in Winfield, Kansas in one way or another for the last 10 years.
Great. And we always start on, kind of on the podcast talking about our stories in dealing with burnout or overwhelm or anxiety, because I find that within medicine, we don't get enough opportunities to really talk about our lived experiences. So share with the listeners kind of your story and what that looked like for you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So coming out of residency, I knew that I had signed up for kind of like the traditional internal medicine, right? Inpatient and outpatient, or what it was framed at that point in time was a comprehensivist doing inpatient and outpatient. And being in a rural setting, we're 45 minutes from a relatively large city for Kansas. We're 45 minutes south of Wichita. And so what that means is that we stabilize patients and we could keep them if we felt comfortable. So running a vent, running pressors, coming out of residency, felt very comfortable doing that. I was one of 3 internists in the area, and we pull from about a 120-mile radius.
Wow.
So we got patients from northern Oklahoma and, quite a far reach outside of our area. Reason being, Kansas is a very rural state. So what does that mean in terms of medicine? Coming out of residency, it was fun, right? Because I did inpatient, I did ICU, I did consults. I also admitted my own. The first 6 months was not a problem because as I was building up the outpatient clinic, I had fun in the ICU. My residency, I had fun in the ICU as well. When it came to be a problem was when I had a full clinic and I would say full patient load in the hospital as well. Mm-hmm. What did that look like? About 18 to 20 patients in clinic plus the hospital.
Yeah.
And again, I'm admitting my own. Most of the patients that were in ICU, I was consulted. And then also I got consults from the other docs. So surgeons or family practice. Mm-hmm. And so that extended my day. There were nights where I wasn't going home until 8, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was getting called at all odd hours of the night.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the problem that happened was when I would get called on my weekends off or even on vacation. And there was a culture of you don't say no. You go in and help.
Yeah, because you want to take care of your patients, right? Like, isn't that what you want?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't mind that. That's what I signed up for. That's what I find. Yeah. That's what I have found fun. But
not all day, all the time.
Not all the time. I mean, rest. It was to the point where I was getting woken up every night, again, including on my time off.
Yeah.
And I remember a distinct time when I was in Chimayo, New Mexico, at an old Spanish chapel. And I was obviously out of state on vacation. I had let the switchboard know. and the ER was paging me. That should not have happened. The proper channels in place had actually worked.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm in New Mexico. I can't help you. Yeah. And I was about ready to lose my temper. And my aunt had to remind me that we were on sacred ground, so cool it. Or another time when I was in California, 2 hours behind Central Time, and I was getting paged at 5 o'clock in the morning. Again, my time off.
Yep.
And so when I tried to discuss that, well, your generation just doesn't like to work. No. And this was from another physician, not admin. It's not that I don't like to work. It's that I also understand that there's more to life than work.
Yeah. And even if you didn't, quote unquote, understand that, you also need rest. You also need off time, right? Wow. Oh. Yeah. What a barb, right? Like, just, you don't like to work.
Yeah.
It's such a common sort of toxic mindset, right? That's been inherited for, I think, a lot of generations of doctors, right? And I don't know about you, I'm an elderly millennial. I'm like at the top of the oldest millennials. So I can see, some generational differences, but what are we doing when we are putting phrases like that out there of you just don't like to work when you are literally in a different state on vacation?
Yeah, I think it's that mindset of, well, I did it and I'm here and I'm fine.
Right.
But we also have to look at, sleep deprivation is a torture technique.
Right.
And why are we glorifying that in medicine? We know that, and we don't want an impaired physician with substance. Right. We know that sleep deprivation is equal to, if not worse, than intoxication.
Yeah.
So why are we glorifying that? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, we're dehumanizing. And if this ruffles the listener's feathers, I'm not trying to do that. But let's be honest. It's dehumanizing the physician. I mean, I would not tell my medical students or my residents who have busted their tails, have jumped through all the hoops, that you just don't like to work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lie in itself because we know how rigorous the training is. And if nothing else, it's gotten even more. Maybe not the long hours, but the amount of knowledge that we have to know, because the amount of medical information and the subspecializations of everything.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, right? You can get a daily digest of all the latest articles and all the things, a daily collection of 10 to 20 articles that have just been published on all the, and just, for sort of internal medicine related topics, right? Like the volume is so much more immense, and our ability to access it immediately, and therefore the pressure is so much more intense. Yeah. Yeah. And what do we want to pass down, right, to future generations? What do we want their expectations to be about their life? I think that wasn't something that I reflected very much on when I was a teacher, but something that came to me afterwards of, oh no, I can see where I passed on things that weren't helpful because of what I thought, was right based on, kind of messaging that I had received.
Yeah. And, I have to say that with my med students, I tell them, okay, if you have an attending that you didn't like their behavior, don't treat your med students like that. If you have a resident you did not like their behavior, don't do that.
Yeah.
Typically when I have residents or med students, it's just like, let's go out and have lunch. Well, yeah, how do we do that? Well, I'm the attending. I'm inviting you. It's on me. So that way, the only thing that I ask you to do is pay it forward. When you see somebody struggling, reach out. When you see somebody that is maybe having a hard call and you're with them, you're their senior resident, you're the attending, you're the intern, and you see a medical student struggling, step aside and talk to them. Don't
be the human.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forget the rank because you teach me as much as I teach you, sometimes even more. And be the example you want to see and to set.
It's so powerful. I'm glad that you shared that, because what you're really talking about is breaking up, kind of we have this term generational trauma, right? But this is generational hierarchy, right? This is, well, we passed this down, right? This is how I learned, and this is how you're going to learn. And I suffered in this way, and you're going to suffer in this way. And here you are being a voice that's saying, no, not only am I not going to do that, but I'm also going to point out, that this is not the way that, you want to perpetuate things when you are in a position of teaching to the medical students, to the residents, because eventually they will be, right?
Exactly.
Whether they're overtly teaching or not, like we all become teachers in some respect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And so you were in this time where, all these inappropriate phone calls, right? You were getting pushback if you tried to say no. Tell us sort of what happened for you when you kind of realized that like all of this was kind of just too much. What did you do?
Yeah, the straw that broke the camel's back was when my mom had a pretty major stroke in March of 2016. And she just retired. She is a retired Spanish teacher. So she was very well versed in the Romance languages, reading and writing. The stroke left her unable to read and write. And she needed 24-hour care. She was still a walkie-talkie, but again, the impulsivity. She went from driving to not. She went from being able to, cook Thanksgiving dinner since we just got done with that holiday to barely able to get her own cup of water.
Yeah.
So that's life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
I asked my partner, another physician, okay, I really don't know what to do. I really want to go up there and just be with her. The answer I got was, well, what is that going to change? And so for me, that was, the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
And I changed to a position where, well, I left and I changed to a position where it was outpatient only and Monday through Friday, no call. And that way I could be with my family. And they were quite accommodating. And I'd like to point out that the mix of physicians has changed in the initial place that I was.
Mm-hmm.
It is now about 50% male, 50% female.
Mm-hmm.
And the age difference is I'm not just one of the younger physicians. It's a better mix.
Yeah.
So I think that also adds to the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Because as the mix changes, of course, what people hang on to, and the things that they pass down and the things that they say to each other changes, right? At least there's an opportunity for it.
Right.
And that's much more likely to occur compared to, and I don't care if this offends, like a bunch of old guys, right? A bunch of old white guys kind of running the show, which unfortunately has been the culture for many places for many years. And now, as more women come in, as we have, more racial ethnic diversity, as we have more, gender inclusivity, right, there is opportunity for changing language, for, pointing out things that we didn't realize were oppressive systems before, that we can recognize, do we really want to be a culture that you should get paid when you're on vacation? Like, does anybody really want that? And it strikes me, I've heard a lot of sub specialists, right, tell me that they would always get paged when they were on vacation because like they were the only person who did, this very, discrete kind of surgery, for example. And that's a different challenge, but for a generalist to not have the ability to go, I mean, there's no real reason for that other than culture. This is how we do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree. I will say this is that there were systems in place that were failing, right? Mm-hmm. The switchboard, things like that.
Yep.
And one of the things that I did say when I transitioned from one position to another was that you have to have some things in place. Mm-hmm. And one of that is a better way to know who's on, who's off. Mm-hmm. You have to have a hospitalist because the model that you have is not sustainable.
Yep. Not with those volumes.
No.
Yep.
And they were wanting to grow the services and like the subspecialties in the area. I said, it's not somebody's having chest pain, admit to Dr. Shaw and have her consult cardiology. That's not a plan. That's dumping.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that. And after that, about a year later, they were looking for a hospitalist crew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so initially that's the way it was. And family circumstances took me away from the same place I am now. Mm-hmm. I came back because I wanted to raise my kids in a small town. Mm-hmm. The crime rate is less. This is really Mulberry, where I'm more scared of wildlife than the people of that. And I'm not scared of the wildlife, but just to put things in perspective. But now coming back, I'm part-time. I'm 30 hours a week, outpatient only. We have a hospitalist program, and my time off is very well respected.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us about that process of figuring out boundaries, because it sounds like part of it has been, sort of culture of allowing for boundaries, right? Has been an issue, whether or not it was okay or not okay, but also we need to, decide on sort of what boundaries are important for us and how we're going to hold true to them, right? Because it's not only setting boundaries, but also maintaining them. Tell us a little bit about that process for you.
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to 2019. 2019, my son was about a year old, and I had another one on the way. And I was working 5-6 days a week. My choice, self-inflicted. I'm going to own that. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, I lost my best friend and colleague to suicide. Mm-hmm. And she was also a physician. She took her own life in her office. Yeah. And it was unexpected. And at that point, it's just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What happened? Where did this come from? And that really makes you think about what am I doing? What am I doing with my time? What am I doing with my life? I don't want to be working in a system that would allow that.
Yeah.
And, we really don't know the reason, but I know that she did not get the help that she needed because of fear for professional repercussion.
Yeah.
That was the second time I considered leaving medicine. Mm-hmm. I did not, because I found a way around it, in the sense of, okay, what's important to me? That's where boundaries started becoming really important. Mm-hmm. Okay, what's important to me? What's important to me is my family. And when I'm off, I'm completely off, because I have young kids. I have a family. I want to be there. I want to be there for their events. I want to be there for, my mom and the extended family.
Yeah.
We have a very close-knit extended family. Okay, why do I want to stay in medicine? Because truly, I love taking care of patients. I love internal medicine. I can't imagine myself doing anything else in the medical field.
Yeah.
So I decided that I would come back to rural Kansas. I still stayed here, 2-3 weekends a month. Mm-hmm. Outpatient only. But now I decided, okay, I negotiated a position where it was part-time. It was 3 days a week, outpatient only. Again, we have a hospitalist program. Mm-hmm. When I'm off, I'm off. When I'm on call, I'll take the calls. Yeah. But otherwise, I'm not obliged, nor is anybody else in this situation obliged to take that call.
Yeah. Do you turn your pager off?
I don't have a pager. I have my cell phone.
We don't have a pager anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So
we could turn those devices off.
we could. And, if I'm not on call, I let the phone sit.
Yeah.
It's not important to me. What's important to me is being with my family and with the crazy animals we have. But what does that have to do with boundaries? I delineate what I wanted my home life to look like. I delineated what I wanted my professional life to look like. Mm-hmm. And I negotiated that. It was a mutual fit. Mm-hmm. I can see myself doing this for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So for me, it's sustainable. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to stick to those boundaries of this is what I will do. This is what I won't do. Because when I don't like myself.
Yeah.
I don't like the version of another Sapna that I become. It's very irritable. It's very type A personality, even more so.
Mm-hmm.
And it's miserable not only for me, but for those around me.
Yeah.
And I don't want that for my kids.
Yeah. Well, I want to highlight what you said, which is that we can still, love medicine, right? We can love the work that we do and still be drowning by, there's too much of it. Because I think sometimes we'll treat those things as mutually exclusive, right? Like either I love taking care of patients and I'm willing to do it all day, every day. And sure, call me, any time of day, even if I'm halfway around the world, or, I don't want to work, right? Like that's often how it's presented to us, that it's like, no, I can love this work and I can decide I'm going to limit it to, these circumstances, to these hours, to this scope of practice, like whatever that works for you, right? Like There could be a world where you might still enjoy, taking care of a few patients in the hospital, but it's going to have to come at fewer patients in the outpatient setting, right? It's like there have to be those trade-offs, which we don't always have a lot of control over. So looking at the situation and deciding, okay, with this set of context, right? Mm-hmm. What do I want to do?
Right.
And similarly, like when it comes to our kids, like even though we love our kids, most of us probably don't want to spend 24 hours a day with them. We need to, some breaks sometimes that we're not with it. It's the same duality and it's not wrong.
Correct. And, going back to one of the things that you were talking about as culture and medicine shifts, we also have to remember more than 50% of the medical student classes are female. Mm-hmm. But who's at a higher rate or higher risk of burnout? Women.
Yep.
Who's at the higher risk of suicide in the medical profession as a physician? Yep. Women are 2 times more likely than the male colleagues to die by suicide.
Yeah, to successfully complete suicide, as it's called, right?
Yes, correct. And now if you look at those statistics compared to the general population, it's usually men are more successful at completing, not women.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
Change the dynamic. Yeah. What does that tell us? Yeah.
That tells us that we still have a lot of work to do, because if we want those women to stay, and it's not that they can't be successful on their own. I'm not saying that at all, because look at how far we've come.
Yeah.
But we have to change the culture, because the culture that still exists in medicine is based on an archaic idea where men, unmarried, lived in the hospital, thus the term residents, and they dedicated that portion of their lives to taking care of patients.
Yeah.
And that is not the case today.
And then when they did, graduate from residency, when they did go out, then they had a stay-at-home partner nearly all the time, and they were never present in the home. There were very different circumstances. And when we came into the profession as women, we weren't allowed to put down any of the traditional responsibilities or, any of the traditional tropes, that we think of women. Like we're still expected to contribute cookies to the potluck and to smile, to be the nice one and the easy one to work with. And no, you won't get a chaperone / helper for, any gynecologic care. There's lots of things that we've held on to there that are working against us still. And it takes work to undo. Yeah.
And I always say, for example, Halloween, both my kids asked, "Mommy, why weren't you at our class party?" Mm-hmm. All the other moms were. And I said, "Oh, Mommy was taking care of sick patients at the office." "Oh, okay." Like mommy was being a doctor.
Yeah.
Maybe next time, or I can contribute in a different way. But if Mommy has to work, Mommy's going to work. But didn't I take you trick-or-treating? Well, yeah. Didn't I get you your costumes? Well, yeah. Okay. So are you really lacking anything? They just went about their day.
Yeah.
So it's also reframing, not only for our kids, but let's start with ourselves. It's okay to you can't be everywhere all at once.
Can't be.
So do what you can. and forgive yourself for the rest. Or just not really forgive yourself, but in the words of Elsa, let it go.
That's true. And decide for yourself what you want to let go of.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's also going to be different for each of us, right? Like what we find important in our work, in our home life, in our parenting, in our partnerships, right? All of that is going to be different and look different for each of us. And that's okay.
Yes.
Like I decided when I became a parent, like I'm never going to care about PTA stuff. It's not my bag. I don't mind giving them money, but I don't ever want to go to a PTA meeting. And I'm holding true to that because it just doesn't appeal. I'm like, nope. No committees, no meetings.
Exactly.
That's fine. And that's not how, I see many other parents operating. That's fine. But I have to decide for myself that that's okay. Even though, right, the thoughts creep in of like, well, you should be doing more. Because we can always have that thought.
Right. But again, let's put it this way. If it's on your free time, right? Kind of like when I was on vacation, I shouldn't have been getting called.
Mm-hmm.
When it's on your free time, and if it doesn't fill your cup, don't do it.
Don't you?
Yeah, just don't do it.
Give yourself that gift. Decide for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been really helpful for somebody out there who's listening to us talk and they're finding themselves in your story, and they're in a place of struggle where it feels like things are too much, even though, they still think they have a love of medicine. What do you want them to know? Like, what would have been helpful for you to hear at that time?
That's a great question. I think a few things. One, no is a complete sentence. I mean, we know it. It's hard to practice.
Mm-hmm.
And really until my mom's health went south, I didn't hold true to that.
Yeah.
Boundaries are important. And you might get pushback. And that's just because you're not doing what other people want you to do.
Yeah.
Boundaries are not evil. They rub people the wrong way because they can't get out of you what they want. But boundaries are
what they've gotten in the past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you have two limited resources, and that's time and energy, how do you want to spend that? So boundaries help with that. The other, I think the biggest part is sitting down and looking at what do you want out of life? And once you construct that, for example, for me, it was I want to be able to keep my kids home and not in daycare. So we as a family, we arranged that.
Mm-hmm.
We were working off each other's schedules.
Mm-hmm.
But that was important to me. So I chose to go part-time. That way I could balance my personal life and my work life. So know that it is possible, but you have to take the time and list out what's important to you as far as a family, as far as professional, as far as financial. And once you understand that, in addition to your core values, that'll really help in developing those boundaries, help in developing that ability to say no, and help with that ability to carve out the space you want in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And to figure out, okay, well, if these things are very important to me and these are my priorities, how will I make that work?
Right.
Rather than feeling the pressure of everybody else's expectations and everybody else's ideas about the way that things should go and maybe fitting yourself in last.
Right. You need to put yourself, you need to put your needs first.
Yeah.
And that's not selfish. That's very reverse of the way we've been taught.
Yes. It's not selfish. It's necessary. It's important.
It's the number one thing that is important, right? Your own health.
Yeah.
Mental, physical, spiritual, emotional.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why we make the worst patients is because we put things off for so long. Oh, it's fine. No, it's fine. And it's not fine. And it's not fine.
Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I know that you have a podcast. I'd love for you to share where people can, find your podcast and what you talk about on your show.
Sure. Thanks for that question. It's called The Worthy Physician, and you can find it on all major podcast platforms, including YouTube as well. Or you can go to theworthyphysician.com and blog posts, the episodes, and free resources are there.
Great. And we'll have links to that in our show notes so that people can find you. Sapna, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. It's a pleasure to talk with you. And I'm really grateful for all the little nuggets that you shared in your story. And, as women physicians, working together to change the culture and change the way that we think about our lives, I just want to say thank you for the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, my friends, thank you so much as always for joining us on the show. Please go check out The Worthy Physician and theworthyphysician.com to learn more about Dr. Sapna Shah-Haque. And until next time, take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.